Welcome to Two Grandpas Talking Tech. I'm your host, Grandpa Greg.
And I'm your host, Jay Benjamin, or iPad Grandpa, as my grandkids call me.
If you're just tuning in and you didn't catch our first episode, which was iPhone focused, we gave a little bit of an introduction there. We're going to talk about iPad Grandpa, Grandpa Greg, all of those kinds of things in future episodes. But in our first episode, we dove in deep to state of the iPhone, what we think about the iPhone, what our daily drivers are, which one you should buy in which circumstances. And in this episode, we're actually going to cover the Mac, which surprisingly, it was a pretty long recording session for the Mac, partially because there's a brand new Mac that we have never seen before, and I was super excited about it. I'm not sure Jason was excited when we started, but Jason, I think you kind of came along and are a little bit more excited about the new Mac.
Yeah, I'm excited to try one out, right? Specifically, what you recommended to try to get us through this whole speed hiccup we have with recording. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. So if it's the Mac you're interested in, you're in the right episode. If it's the iPhone, the iPad, Apple Watch, AirPods, or some of Apple's other stuff, hit subscribe, check out the channel, and you'll see those. But Jason, I think now it's time for us to just dive in deep to the Mac.
Yep. Let's get to it.
So continuing on with this first series for us, in-depth review of Apple products, not really review of the products, but kind of the state of Apple, those types of things. In this segment, we want to talk about the Macintosh. So just to give you a reminder of what we're going to do, we're going to tell you what the rundown, the current lineup, what's all available, not sizes and all that kind of stuff, but to just the general products that are available, kind of give our overall take on the state of that lineup, anything that stands out to us, what is our daily driver, what the default purchase that everyone thinks should be. And then if you're not going to purchase the default, we're going to talk about why you would consider other devices besides those. And then we'll cover buying advice and then anything we're looking forward to with the Mac. I think I want to preface this before, Jason, you run down what's available. This is probably the segment of Apple that we're probably both the least interested in as far as in depth. We're not as passionate about it as the iPhone or the iPad for sure. Mac is the one thing that I see more as a tool than anything else. And if you asked me of all the things in my tech stack that I would like to not have to use, it would be the Mac. Not because I don't like the Mac or that it doesn't do well. I definitely don't want to go down the Windows pathway, but because I like the iPad better than the Mac. And if my iPad could as easily do all of the things that I need to do on my Mac, then I wouldn't have a Mac. I'd have my iPad.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good precursor for this segment from me. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. If I didn't have to use the Mac, I wouldn't. I'm definitely iPad only. And while you're right, this is not a category that we don't feel as passionate about as the other ones, we still love it, right? We still love hearing about and seeing the improvements and every year checking out the improvements to the operating system and stuff like that. So, while we're not as passionate about it as other devices, we still hope we could do this section some justice, right? Because we still both own plenty of Macs, right? So, yeah. So, again, not as passionate about it, but we're going to do our best and try to give you guys some information about it. Maybe help you out in choosing the best Mac for yourself. So.
Yep. I've got two of them in my house. At my last job, I had a third one. So when they gave me a choice of getting a Mac, I was like, yes, please. Because up until that point, I had told them that the Dell junk machine that they had sent me was just sitting over here and I was doing everything on my iPad. So Jason, give us a rundown.
Yeah.
What is the current lineup of the Mac?
Yeah. So I guess we'll start off with more of the lighter, lower end stuff, and then we'll get into the more heavy duty Mac. So right out of the gate, you have the newest, but not the latest, but definitely not the greatest Mac, and that's the Neo, which comes into some really, really fun colors. Definitely a attractive and curious price range. We'll talk about that with the intro and everything. But yeah, it's a curious one. It's a curious one. So after that, we have the MacBook Air, which is by far always been my favorite MacBook, and I'll talk about why later. But the MacBook Air is just it just checks it ticks so many boxes for me that yeah, the MacBook Air just it does it for me. I really love it. Then, of course, is the MacBook Pro, and I have a opinion about the MacBook Pro, which I think we'll jump into that. I think you probably share the same opinion as me and most people. Yeah, we'll come back to the MacBook Pro, and that's your more. I'm not even going to say mid range, right? The Air should be mid range. The Pro should be top of the line for laptop users, right?
Hmm.
And it can get pretty pricey, right? I think we maxed out all of the specs and the biggest hard drive and everything and the fastest processor, and it was pretty pricey. So this is definitely your prosumer to professional type device. It's not. Then you have the iMac, and the iMac has been the next Mac I'm going to talk about. Had been neglected for a few years, and then they picked it back up and they tried to do some fun colors and stuff with it, but it still hadn't got back to its heydays of when the iMac was just a great PC. And I think that's mainly because of the way people changed how they do computer processes or computing and stuff now, or whatever word you want to use for that. I think it's just the way people change the way they do things. Everyone's more mobile now. No one wants to be fixed to a desk anymore. So iMac, while it's still a great product, it has its use cases and stuff. It just kind of it's seen as glory days. Then you have the Mac Mini, which again, like the Air, has a sweet spot in my heart. It is really a great device. Another device has been neglected over the last few years because of another MacBook line that I think that they chose to focus on because it fits more with the lifestyle that people have. But the Mac Mini is a great device. Again, not for everyone, but has some really great use cases. The Mac Studio, and, you'll hear me say that this a lot when it's not for everybody. This is truly a device that's not for everyone, right? This is a MacBook. Think of a MacBook with a specific purpose. While you can do most of everything in it, this is really for people who are content creators, who are creating audio and video media for people to consume, right? This is not, especially at the price point, this is not something that some grandmother wants to buy for her grandkids for Christmas, unless they want to follow that path of going down entertainment and stuff like that. So think of it as a Mac that's specifically geared to a certain job description or certain industry or certain things. So you can do other stuff on it, but
Yeah, it's also
it's really focused.
it's also, I mean, we'll talk about the last one, but it's also the only high end desktop that they
Right.
have, right? The Studio. So if you don't want portable, you want something that sits in place, it's an all in one, right? So
Mhm.
it's the only way you get the high end doing that anymore because the last one that you'll talk about is, I can't believe
Yeah,
they're still selling
which
it.
is really neglected. Yeah, which is really neglected and really the redheaded stepchild of the MacBook line is the Mac Pro, which used to be the go-to device for most content creators and stuff, right? It used to be the end all be all when it comes to Mac, right? These are some devices where you can literally spend 10K on, on a decent device if you had that type of money to spend on a Mac. But yeah, yeah. So that's the Mac lineup. Pretty wide range of pricing, right? When
Yeah. So by the way, I just maxed out price wise, maxed out everything on a MacBook Pro and it's $7,400.
Whoa, wow,
So it's big. It's a lot.
yeah.
But so
Let,
here's the thing.
let's
So
out a studio.
yeah, you do that
Well,
while
we'll
I,
get to it. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So here's the thing though. I mean, the Pro, they probably won't touch anymore. I doubt they're going to do anything with it. But the reality is they don't need to because unless they're really going to cater to the Pixar crowd, right, that is going to start a new movie and they buy everybody the highest end Mac that they can possibly buy that sits in an office somewhere, and because that's how they do a movie, and then every 3 years, once they're done doing the movie, they throw them out and start over. That's just not a huge market anymore, right? The reality is
Right.
that the functionality has got pushed down so much, down from the pros down to the regulars, and today down to the Neo. And so if I talk about the overall state of the lineup, I do think the Pro's going to go away. I understand why the Studio and the iMac are there. The Mini is very, very specific use cases. And then you've got the three MacBook style stuff. But the thing that impresses me most on the lineup is how much you can do clear down at the bottom
Right.
end, right? So that's my
Right.
overall state
Right.
is all of these Macs are ridiculously capable. You can get the entry level, you can get the highest end. 99.9% of people don't need to spend $7,400 on a MacBook Pro to do the things that they need to do. And we'll talk about different use cases, what the default is and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the overall state of the lineup, these devices are ridiculously capable for handling
Yes.
anything anyone is going to throw at them.
Right. Right. And that's what I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the MacBook Pro. So, and this is the problem it has. And it's not that this lineup is crowded like the iPhone lineup, right? iPhones are phones, and we talked about that being crowded earlier. The Mac is a little different. And the reason why is because of the MacBook Pro. Now, again, we don't want anybody going into debt buying the devices and stuff. Buy the devices that fit within your price range and your need that's going to serve you the best. But it's funny because the entry level MacBook Pro can do everything that everyone would need, right? If you fall right in the middle, even if you don't max it out, you go with uh you know reasonable processor, reasonable amount of storage, and all of that, you can pretty much get done anything that you need to do, even some of the stuff that the Studio or Pro or having a Mini would do, and still get by. And it may not do it as fast or as in style as some of the other ones, but um, and that's where I think that the Mac Pro kind of hurts the lineup. Not hurt the lineup. I guess that's
Yeah.
not really the right word. I just think that kind of people would just default to the Mac Pro and not even consider the Neo or the Air or something like that, especially if it's a gift. If you're a grandpa and you're buying something for the grandkids, I don't know if they do this. I don't know if they do that. I don't know if they're gonna want these wild colors in the Neo. I'll just go with the Pro, right? And I think that
Yeah.
most people do that, and I think that's what Apple wants them to do, right? Because it's still, for them at least, a very profitable device. So that's why I say it's not crowded, but it's just that each device can get done anything that you need it to do. They're really capable, like you said, and the MacBook Pro is probably the most capable of all of the devices.
It's probably the most capable for the most scenarios, right?
Right.
Because, yeah,
Right.
you can get a Studio. Well, actually, you can get the MacBook Pro just as maxed out as a Studio. That's $7,400. But think of the range. So I just put
Right.
an entry level MacBook Pro is $1,700. Go up one chip
Right.
from the regular chip to the Pro chip, you add 500. So you've got a range from anywhere from 17 to 2200 all the way up to $7,400 that you can spend on a MacBook. That's
Wow.
just an incredible range. So if Apple
That
only
is.
had one product other than the $1,700 being way too expensive, right, for entry level, um, anybody could use any one of those computers to do anything that they needed to do.
Right. I maxed out the Studio, and this is with a Final Cut and Logic. The license is installed when you purchase it. You ready for this? $12,598. That's some pro level stuff right there. So, and again, like I mentioned when we were talking about the lineup, it's not for everybody. This is not. This is
Yeah.
nowhere near a Christmas gift for the grandkids. This is not daughters going to school for the next semester. This is not that type of Mac. So yeah, you hit the 12,000 bucks and you go like, wow, I'm amazed. But yeah, this is definitely for professionals.
That's the Pixar machine, right? That $12,000 machine is the one that That's your company's buying you because they're going to make $200 million on the product of your work or whatever it is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anything else, Jason, on the kind of the state of the Mac lineup? Anything else you wanted to mention, or anything else as far as ice that stands out there? Anything else on those?
No, no, but just to say again, the one that stands out the most is I think is the top seller, and that's just the MacBook Pro with so many different configurations. Like you mentioned, the price range, I think that's just the default for most people, which that shouldn't necessarily be the case. And we'll go into that when we start talking about which device is best for who. But yeah, yeah, I think the Mac Pro just definitely stands out as the default to most people.
Well, I'm going to hold on what one stands out to me because I'm going to talk about it as the default purchase. But for a
Okay.
daily driver, you don't touch a Mac on a daily basis, right?
No, no, I don't. And just like you, I have two here. I have my old MacBook Air, which I handed down to my son, which he already popped the S key off for it. I was so mad about it. Um, he's 15, so they don't take care of anything. They don't respect or love anything at this age. So, but enough of that. And my wife has the M2 or M1 Mac. I can't remember. I believe it's the M2. We got it, purchased it brand new, and I remember like 3 months later, it was already outdated.
Is
It
it
is
an
still
Air
really a
or
great machine.
is it an Air?
No, it's a Pro. No,
Okay.
it's a
All
Pro.
right. Yeah.
And it is a really great machine. I jump on it just to do a little maintenance here and there for her, clean some stuff off. If I ever need to uh, a heavy task to where I need a computer, I'll jump on it. But really, I'm MacBook. I mean, I'm iPad only, and I try not to use anything else. I had a horror story the other day. I think I mentioned to you where I had to use an old Windows PC that I dug out of the junk drawer in there, and it was a terrible experience. So no MacBooks, definitely no Windows PCs for me, but no MacBook that I own personally. They're in here in the home, but no, as my daily driver, it is my iPad Pro.
Well, for me, I'm doing all of this on an M3 MacBook Pro, 512
Hmm.
SSD, 18 gigabytes of RAM. It's basically the entry level with the Pro chip. And I wanted the Pro chip
Yeah.
because of video editing and some of those kinds of things. We'll talk about whether that's even necessary anymore. It's my daily driver. Again, if I could do everything as easily, like I use DaVinci Resolve to edit video, DaVinci Resolve for everything I do works just fine on the iPad. I've actually tested
Hmm.
that. It's just a little more difficult to get done just because of the way those kinds of programs are just designed for Mac OS, not for iPad OS.
Right.
So I'm going to start this next one because I want to get your take on this. So in the past, I think we always recommended that let's put aside refurbs or any of those kinds of things or the Walmart stuff that you can buy at the moment. So if you're
Yeah.
buying a new Mac from Apple, what should be the default? And I got to say, it's only been out for a few weeks, but everything I am hearing is how surprised people are about the capabilities of the Neo, the new MacBook
Yeah.
Neo. And just to give everybody, Jason gave you a little bit of highlights, but this is absolutely an entry level device. And there are very
Yeah.
few things you can do to this device. I'm just going to pull up the specs right. There are two things you can choose between with the MacBook Neo. So you can choose the color, which is silver, blush, which is pink, citrus, which is a yellow green, and indigo, which is their latest name for blue. I don't know why they have to come up with new names for blue and black all the time.
So many different blues. Yeah.
And then you can choose between a 256 gig SSD or 512. And with the 512, you then get Touch ID on the keyboard. But that's it.
Right.
Those are your only choices. You don't get to choose how much memory you get. It's 8 gigabytes, which is the bare minimum that Apple would ever do. And it's the one thing that everybody is kind of thrown up about, that they've been worried that that's not going to be enough. And I want to talk about that in a second. But literally, you get
Right.
no other choices. So this is as entry level as things get. And the reason I'm bringing this up is this should be people's default. No matter what,
Really?
no matter what you do, I believe this is where you start, and you need to deliberately decide to go up from there. And the reason I say that is because all of the reviews that I've seen, and I'm not talking about people that do just general consumer stuff. I'm talking about people like Tyler Stallman that does serious video and photography editing.
Yeah.
Most of his workflow he can get done on a MacBook Neo. It's just a little bit slower.
Didn't expect for you to say that.
Yeah, I watched a video of somebody that just does DaVinci Resolve because I was super interested in it since that's what I use.
Hmm.
And they were running the tests and watching the metrics on consumption and all of those kinds of things. And again, for what 99% of people are going to do in DaVinci Resolve, the Neo will get it done just a little bit slower, and it's going to use more memory swap
Yeah.
than you would. They actually went so far as to say if they went from 8 to 12 gigs of memory in the Neo, the DaVinci Resolve would have no problems.
I'm very surprised to hear you say that. As a default, right? I think that most of the reviews I saw starting off were pretty negative, and you sent me a few of them, and I started seeing people actually putting it through its paces. Right, this was only the first couple of days, and then there are a lot of Apple haters out there. Right, they're just gonna hate everything that they do, no matter what. I have to admit, I'm still surprised that you're putting that as the default because I'm the opposite. I think that the Air or the Pro should be the default for most people, as the Pro already is, and they should know what they're getting into when they go with the Neo, right? I think that that's specifically for, school age children, basically replacing the netbook, right? Even some college classes and stuff like that, depending on the software that you would have to use for classes and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised that you're saying that's your default pick.
Well, here's the thing. It's $599 or
Yeah,
$699 for the upgraded. If you go to education, it's $100 cheaper, right?
right.
So
You get the discount.
think about this. You're going to send your teenager to college here, maybe in a few years, right? He
Hmm.
could choose to do something else, but um, unless he's going to be an architect or a video producer or something like that, and there's even an argument for that. I've heard people talk about how Xcode runs just fine on a Neo. It's just a little bit slower. Again,
Right,
college, they're not making money off of how fast they can, you know, if you're writing an app
right. They're only
that you're
costing money.
living and you need to get that next version out there, then you want it to
Yeah,
go as quickly as possible. If I'm in college, I don't have that. But if I'm a history major or a science major and I'm going to use it for papers and, you know, all of those kinds of basic things, email and browsing and all of that kind of stuff, there is just nothing that the Neo can't do from everything that I've seen. The only question that I have in my mind about that is how long is it going to be good enough for? So if I'm going to go to
right,
college for 4
right,
years and I buy the Neo now at $600, 2 years from now, is it going to be good enough? But here's the thing. If 2 years from now they have a MacBook Neo that's got 16 gigabytes of RAM and a brand new processor and all those
and
kinds
they
of
will.
things, and I
Yeah,
spend another $600 at that point, I'm not that far off from what I probably would have spent on a MacBook Air anyway, because it's $599 or $699, and then it's $1099 at the bottom end on the MacBook Air, right? And so
right.
if by chance it couldn't meet my needs, I can still trade it in, buy another one,
Yep,
and I probably spent the same amount that I would have on a MacBook Air over that same 4 year period. But if it doesn't become
yeah,
obsolete for me, I have $500 that can go somewhere else.
yeah. And you brought up an interesting point too. One thing I didn't realize is, and Apple's known for this, especially over the last decade or so. How long are they going to allow it to be? Right, when they release the next version of Mac OS, is it going to be severely crippled? Right, or You have to wait to the dot one or dot two version of that version of Mac OS for them to correct whatever issues they cause with this. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Hmm.
Or is it going to be one of those things where they're going to have a specific version of Mac OS just for the Neo, which I don't see them doing. I see them just keeping it the same. But how long are they going to allow it to be relevant? Are they going to cripple it after 2 years with whatever new version of Mac OS 27 or 28 or something like that? I guess you're right. Like while the price range is really good, could you do better by just going with a MacBook Pro in 2 years? In the
Yeah.
long run or something like that.
But here's the other thing. So I understand what you're saying. I don't think they're going to cripple this because Tim Cook had already come out and said that they broke all kinds of records in Mac sales with a new release.
Yeah,
And fine,
yeah.
they put out new versions of the Pro and all of that, but the Neo is the only new thing there. And the record he said they broke was with first time Mac users. So what
Wow.
does that imply that they're buying? They're buying the
Yeah, they're
Neo.
buying new users. Yeah,
So
yeah.
they've got, it's almost like when they've done like the Plus phone or the mini phone that they put them out there. And if they don't sell well, they just don't do them again. Right. I could see that they might have tried this with the MacBook Neo and said, okay, is this going to sell? Are people interested in the cheapest but best? Because Steve Jobs was famous for saying we could make a cheap laptop, we just don't want to. We're not willing to compromise
Right.
like that, right? So they're saying this is the cheapest we can make a Mac of the quality that we want. And everybody that has reviewed it said it is the quality. Yes, it's compromised. It only has 2 ports, all of those kinds of things that you need to understand. But it'll drive an external monitor. It just won't drive two. I mean,
Right.
all of those kinds of
And most
things.
people only need one.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's breaking records. If I go look at this right now, I can't get one, at least not in the color. The silver might be better. Nope. I can't get one of these with the 512 version until at least the 8th of April.
Wow.
And it's
I
been
didn't
out
realize they
for
were out of
three
stock like
weeks,
that.
and this is their entry level MacBook.
Yeah. I have to admit too, even the colors and we've been complaining about the colors. I think they went with some good, safe colors to attract everyone,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I wouldn't want a pink. What is that color? It's pink. We'll just call it
Blush.
pink. Um,
Yeah.
but I definitely could, in mine, I could live with the yellow, right? If I had to, if that was the only thing
Yeah.
in stock and I needed to get it right away, I can live with the yellow. I definitely could live with the blue, and the silver one is just classic anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, good safe price range, good safe colors. Yeah, I can see why this is gonna turn out to be a hit for him.
If any of my kids came to me right now, including Dustin, who's an iPad guy. But if any of them came to me and said, I just need a MacBook for day to day, whatever I'm doing, this is what I would get them. Same thing when the grandkids come up. I just don't see any other need for this. And I tell
Yeah,
them to pick their color. Here's the thing about the citrus. So ATP was discussing this the other day that they were hoping, some people were hoping that Apple would go for like super saturated colors. The problem is it's one thing to
yeah,
look at that orange looking at your phone, but if you were typing on your MacBook for 3 or 4 hours a day and looking at a saturated color like the orange, do you really want to be, because it's the same color around your keyboard, right? The keys are a
yes,
little more dull, but it's that same thing. So you can't go super saturated. So I do think they went safe so that people didn't feel like
yeah,
their eyes were going to fall out when they're staring at their computer for hours and hours and hours on them. Because our phones now are mostly screen on the front side, right? I mean, it's just a
right,
black
right,
screen that we're staring at. Our computers are not that way. So
yeah,
so that is what I would do the default. I'm gonna throw something out there, and I know you said your default would be better. And if you want to dive into the Air or the other, I know we've talked a lot about the Air in the past. That's probably the MacBook most
right.
people are still gonna buy, I think. But Jason, I think you should buy a Neo and use it to make your recording setup easier.
Really? Well, you know, while
Don't
we
tell
were
your wife
talking
it was
about
my
it, and
idea.
You sent a link last night, the iPad Pro versus the Neo, and I still hadn't had a chance to watch the video because I was, getting ready for the today's recording and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna look at that video and see if I would be able to get everything done. Because remember, I considered buying a Mac Mini,
Yeah.
right? But you did some recording from a park and you were mobile and all of that, and I was like, no, I want to be like Greg. I want to be able to record from multiple locations and for whatever the situation called for. And we need to be able to get some good, consistent videos out of it. So I'm gonna take that as a challenge, and I'm really gonna weigh those options. So I'm gonna take a look at that video first. This is one of those things where I miss working for the companies that we work for, right? Because
Yeah.
we would always be able to get these devices and test them out, right?
Yep.
We would be able to get them hands on with them, spend the weekend with them. You know what I mean? You and I would swap out, or you would give me my own, and I would be able to test it. So this would be one that I would say, no, let me spend a week with this thing. Let me test it out and see if I can really get everything done. Now I know from the iPad side, I'll be able to do everything the Neo does, but will the Neo be able to do everything that I want from my iPad? You know what I mean?
I mean, the recording is the only thing I'm thinking about, right? Recording this podcast. And the
Right.
Neo is super portable, right? It's the size of a MacBook Air and all that kind of stuff. And the battery life's great, all those kinds of things. So you'd be able to do that. There's just more friction doing podcasting and YouTube on an iPad, even the iPad Pro,
Right.
right? And yeah, I think you could dial your setup in on the iPad Pro, which I know would be your preference. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think this would simplify it, and you're not talking about a $2,000 or even $1,000 investment. You're talking about a $600 investment that may make your life way, way easier than it is today. And if they advance a
Right.
little more on the iPad stuff, then in theory, you could hand that MacBook off to one of your kids. So,
Yes.
anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. That's how much I am seeing. I am tempted to do this, right? To swap my MacBook Pro for the Neo. That's how I'm tempted. Now I've got an M3, so it's a little older, and you know, it's still phenomenal machine. I won't
Yes.
because with everything I have going on right now, I don't want to wait for DaVinci to render stuff for hours and hours on end. Right? That's not what I want to do, and I don't
Right.
think it would be that bad. But I've got 18 gigs of memory instead of 8. So my stuff is just
Yeah.
gonna, and I've actually got the Pro chip, so it's gonna run faster and all those kinds of things. So, but yeah, I just, we've talked about this. I would not buy a Mac Mini at this point. We'll talk about use cases, and I
Yeah.
heard a really awesome use case for the Mac Mini I want to cover. But at this point, I had thought about a Mac Mini. I would not buy a Mac Mini at this point. I would get the Neo. That would just be my default at this point.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't think about it. Let's be honest, it'll be impossible for you to go back, right? You can't go backwards. You won't be able to do things slower than what you're already doing. But for someone who are just coming to the Mac ecosystem, yeah, it would be perfect for them. So, yeah, let me look into that. Shipping times are still crazy now anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe by the time I make a decision, supply and demand will kind of balance out and I'll be able to just go and pick up one that I want. So,
Apple's got a pretty
but
good
yeah, I knew
return
you
policy
had a
too.
tip for me.
Apple's got a pretty
Yeah,
good return
yeah,
policy. You could test it for a couple of recordings and then make a decision.
yeah. So we didn't talk about this. I know you see me waving my hands and stuff, and you see me watch list, so I didn't bring it up. So I actually do have quite a bit of Apple credit that I'm waiting, which was reserved for my Ultra 3, which for some reason I just hadn't had the time to go and pick up. So yeah, yeah,
Hmm?
we may do
Well,
some testing over the next few weeks and see.
just saying. All right. So, Jason, if you had to pick one, what would be your default? Mine's the Neo. What would be your default?
So I have to say it. And again, it's been my favorite MacBook since Steve Jobs walked out on that stage with the MacBook Air inside the big manila envelope. And I just always loved it. Now, it's not as It's not as mobile, it's not as portable as that one version, right? It was paper thin on one end, right? It kind of
It was a
teardropped, so it's
wedge.
bigger towards the back. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a wedge. It was a wedge,
Mhm.
and that made it super portable, super thin, super light, really a great device. So while it's a little bigger now, it is still a really light and thin laptop and powerful for its size, right? So I have to say it, my default for most people, whether you're going to fall on the lighter side of work or duty or on the heavier side, wherever you fall in, that MacBook is going to, the Air is going to be able to cover a lot of that. And then right next to that would be the Pro, right? Which again, you can run a small business from a Pro or just do your schoolwork and still fall within a decent price range, right? It's still quite a bit more than the Air, but most people are, and I don't want to say that. I don't say that, but I was, because I don't want to normalize that, but I think most people, when they think budget for a laptop, they start off around $1,000 anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So depending on which features you want, you can live without and you need, you can go up a couple of $100 or go down, $200 or $300. So if you're starting off with that $1,000 budget, and not saying that you should or even have the need to, because like Greg just said, the Neo is an awesome computer for most people. But I think for me, I would start with the Air, then maybe weigh your options with the Pro and the Neo, with it being so limited, even though it's pretty capable. I think, like we said with the iPhone Air, you really should know what you're getting into before you jump into
Yeah.
that, because while it still is great, you do things, but a lot slower. So
Yeah.
if you're thinking
Yep.
about upgrading from an older MacBook Pro, it may not be an upgrade for you as much as it would be buying it brand new for your grandchildren or your son or your daughter going off to college or something like that. So
Yeah.
perfect first device, maybe not so much of an upgrade or a lateral move for some people.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything. What I don't want people to do is discount the Neo because of all the things that people
Yeah,
say, oh, it's entry level or it's cheap or, whatever. It is
yeah.
not cheap,
Or that
right?
RAM, or that
Yeah.
RAM that they're talking about, and people don't realize that while if we're talking about Windows PCs, yeah, that RAM is a big deal, but Apple makes the software, the hardware,
Yep.
and they design it all to work perfectly together. So
Yep.
8 gigabytes of RAM on a MacBook doesn't run like 8 gigabytes of RAM on a Windows PC. It just don't. It just doesn't.
I mean, if Tyler Stallman can work on 6K video or those complete raw photographs off of his tens of thousands of dollar camera that he's taken, right? That
Right.
grab every level of detail possible, and it just takes a little bit longer than can do the stuff that you wanted to do. But I agree with you. So, go back to my scenario where you're buying for a college kid, regardless of their major, if they got enough money from grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles that they've got
Hmm.
$1,200 to spend on investing in their 4-year college stuff, you go to the Air, right? I don't disagree with you
Yeah.
because it'll do everything the Neo will do and then some, and it'll be relevant longer, right? So, absolutely
Yes.
100% agree with you. But I say it needs to be the default that you think about first because I don't want people to discount it. I don't want a college kid that comes in and says, well, I got $900 from everybody for graduation and I can spend that on a computer, but I know I need a computer. I don't think you should hesitate to go ahead and buy the Neo and save
Yeah.
the $300 and use that for something else.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I think they'll be happy with it.
So I think when we start talking about, so we've talked quite a bit about the Neo and the Air, just to hit on the Pro a little bit. If you make money with your laptop,
Hmm.
then you probably should consider
Yeah.
the Pro. Although I will say the Air is getting to the point where everything I do, at least, I could probably do plenty fast on the
Yeah. Right.
Air, especially if you get the upgraded processor, which is an extra $100. It gets you more GPU. So, and then if you just add more RAM into it, a more unified memory, it's not RAM anymore in Apple's world, right? It's unified memory. So I think most of what I do today, I could do on the Air, which is also tempting to maybe take a shot at that. But if you make money with your laptop, then odds are you probably know what you need too, right? You're
Right.
not the one
Right.
listening to this podcast to get advice on whether you should buy the Air or the Neo. You're like, no, I make money. And the faster my videos or my code spits out from the machine, the faster I can move on to the next thing that makes me more money. So I think you know that. That's why I wouldn't make it the Pro anymore, is because that Air, and then to a lesser extent, the Neos are just so capable. I could run my multiple businesses, videography, this, the other stuff that I'm doing. I could run all of
Yep.
those probably from a Neo, just not as great. Definitely think I could run them from a M5 MacBook Air.
Yeah. And that was the point I was going to make too. Right. And even if you're not just making money, if you're a small business like we are and you have to do your own social media and your own, all of the tax stuff that comes along with that. I hate to bring that up because it just brings me so much anxiety. You're doing your own social media, you're doing your own, all of your, just business stuff, everything that goes along with it. Yeah. You can get most of that done without having the need to a pro or something like that, or hiring one. So yeah, like Greg said from the very beginning, all of these devices are very capable. You
Yeah.
just need to figure out what you want to do on it or what you need to do on it. Not so much want. I get it. You're just starting off YouTube or you're just starting off podcasting or whatever, and you think you need a studio, but you don't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really don't.
Yep. For the iMac, the only real scenario I could come up with it, and this absolutely doesn't apply to me, is if you're going to have one computer in the house, everybody needs to
Hmm.
have access to it, and you want it in a shared space, which I strongly recommend. Giving teenagers computers in their rooms is, you have to be aware of the risks that go along with
Right.
giving teenagers or young kids computers in their rooms. Their phones are a
Right.
risk too, but the computers can be even more. But so if you want a stationary computer that's in the living room for the whole family to share, iMacs are great, right? They're going to do everything you
Right.
need them to do. They have cool colors. Pick your color, go at it. But beyond that, there's a reason why laptops sell so much more than desktop computers nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just a change with how we compute now, right? Like I
Yep.
mentioned earlier, it's just that everybody's no one wants to be tied down to one spot. Like even us, right? We did gadgets
Yep.
for families in our one spots, and now we're both striving to try to be a little more mobile with it. So I think it's just a change in just lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's so busy. You have to be able to work from the bleachers at the baseball game, at the softball game. You have to be able to, you know, when you're at a different event, you have to be able to pull out and get these numbers and get access to certain things. So I think the days of saying, "Oh, it's at home on my computer," is it's just long gone. Great.
Nobody wants that anymore, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
took an iPad with me in case I had a brilliant idea that I wanted to hurry and execute on my spring break trip, right? I did not take my
Yeah.
Mac with me because wouldn't have needed it. So
Yeah.
I think it's similar with the Mac Mini. You got to have a specific use case. So for me, it's like secondary computer, server type functions, or you've already got a good
Yeah.
monitor and keyboard. They are cheaper, plus you can get some pretty good stuff in them. But I don't know if you've listened to ATP in the last couple of weeks, but Overcast, which is my preferred podcast player, I actually pay for
Mhm.
the pro subscription there. Marco is implementing full transcripts of pretty much every podcast is out there, including private podcasts, which even Apple is not going to transcribe with their new feature.
Right.
So he's using their API. I think he said he bought 24 or 48 Mac Minis and has some of them in a couple of different locations, but then he put a bunch of them in a rack in a data center. And those
Wow.
Mac Minis
Okay.
are able to transcribe all podcasts that come through the Apple RSS feed, because that's what he uses for Overcast, and in multiple
Wow.
languages.
So first, I love stuff like that. I love when people do stuff like that, right? That's what the internet is about to us. Teach their own. I know people use the internet for different things now because again, we have a lot of opinions about social media, so that kind of ruined the internet for me. But hearing stories like that kind of restores my hope.
Yeah, you need to go back. So
So I love it.
his discussion on that was about an hour of they did a post show on it, and it was over an hour long, just talking about how he
Okay.
got there. And he started off with a couple in his closet, and then he put a couple at the restaurant that he owns. And anyway, it was a fascinating
Hmm.
thing. But I think those are the kind of use cases. So again, with the Mac Mini, I think you know it if you need it, you
Yeah.
know it, right?
And that was the same with me when I was considering it. It was
Yeah,
specific use case, and my nephew has one, and it is strictly for gaming, right?
yeah,
It's all of his retro gaming. He runs a couple of different gaming servers and stuff off of it, so they are pretty specific, and they're somewhat mobile, right? We're still talking about a desktop PC, but with it being that little form factor, it's still
yeah.
pretty much mobile, right? You can move it to where you need to be. It's not a laptop, but it's still a lot more mobile than an iMac or a full desktop. So
And if you didn't want to run a full NAS, the Mac Mini is perfectly
yeah,
capable of storing stuff as well, too.
it is. It is. And run it in conjunction with like TrueNAS, some of the services that kind of upload all of the NAS software to an online service. If it's always online, you basically can build a NAS and let the Mac Mini do all of the processing and stuff for you. And you can focus on storage.
Yep,
And we know that that's outrageously expensive now than it was a few years ago. So yeah, yeah. So the Mac
yep.
Mini, it has its place. But again, it's one of those places where a MacBook Pro, an Air, or even an older Pro or something can still fill that spot of the iMac and the Mac Mini.
Yeah, yep. And I think the studio is the same way. If you need it, you know it. So if you're Pixar,
Yeah,
this is probably what you're getting because you want the giant monitors and you want to daisy chain more monitors to it and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And then all the Mac Pro, which used to be the thing, don't buy it.
yes,
Nobody
yeah.
needs it.
Don't. Yeah, I saw. Was it Marquez Brownlee? It was a clip. It was one of those shorts where if you had a Mac Pro now and you trade it in, they don't give you any trade-in value, right? They give you zero for it. It basically has that pop up that say, "Oh, we'll recycle it for you,"
Yep.
but they still sell it for like 3K, right? So you trade it
It's just
in, they give you
ridiculous.
nothing. They do you the favor of recycling it for you, and then they turn around and still sell it. So if you see it, don't buy it. If you see one used, if they give you a good deal for it, if it's still in good condition, if you absolutely wanted it, it's just not something you should be buying right now. With the
Yep.
architecture, with the M lineup of chips that they put in it and things like that, the way apps and software is going, yeah, it's
Yep.
a not it's a don't buy.
All right. Let's wrap up. We've got buying advice and then what we're looking forward to. The only real thing, I mean, we've talked a lot about which computer we should get, right?
Hmm.
My recommended advice is buy as much memory, unified memory, not storage space, but buy as much memory as you can because you can't upgrade it, right? Storage space, you can collect,
Right.
put stuff on external drives, move stuff off, all of those kinds of things, but buy as much storage or as much unified memory as you can afford. It's not cheap to upgrade it. Definitely is not cheap, but buy as much. If you can go up to 32, buy it. Don't go nuts. I don't know that anybody that's thinking about this needs to buy 128, which I think is what you could get on that Mac Pro. But don't
Yeah.
just go with the default. Try and get extra if you can afford to do so, because that'll just help the computer last longer, especially if you're thinking this has got to get me through undergrad and grad school, right? I mean, some of those kinds of things, the
Yeah.
more you do that kind of stuff. But other than that, think about what we just talked about for use cases. Any other buying advice, Jason?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I think it improves the longevity of the machine, right? If you're buying it for college or some parent, if you're buying it for your child that's going off for college this year, if they go with the Neo, maybe they'll be able to have it the next 4 years, But anything beyond that, you know, having more memory in it, more RAM in it would definitely. So you probably would want to go with the upgraded model, which was, I believe you said $150 more. And you get the,
Uh,
let me check it
yeah,
real
it's a
quick. I
hundred
don't want to
dollars
give you
more
guys the
to
wrong number.
$100 more, but it doesn't upgrade the memory on the Neo. So there, it's still 8, but you get the bigger SSD is what you get. But if you go to the Air, then you do have options. You have 16, 24, and 32. right? And so
Yeah.
if I go from 16 to 24, it actually forces you to update to the other chip as well. So it goes up from $1,100 to $1,300. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
No,
that's the
I think 16 gigs is good for most everything.
yep,
Everything that a non-professional can do. Schoolwork, if they want to be a YouTuber, they want to have a little singing career, playing the guitar or something, they can cover songs on YouTube. Even 8 gigs would be enough for that, And we're talking about RAM, not storage, not
right.
the amount that the device can hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just consider the longevity of the machine. How long you're gonna have it? The Neo is still new. It's still Neo. So
Yep.
we don't know. And like you said, we don't see Apple crippling the machine with the next version of Mac OS, but they've been known to have some problems, right? They've been known to have some hiccups, and they spend the next 3 months fixing what they've broken. And then when version point two or point three comes out, then everything is back to normal. So just consider all of that, how long you want to have this machine. If it's just something that you're going to have for a couple of years, 2, 3 years, then yeah, the Neo should be able to get you there.
Okay. I think then the last question we have here is there anything that you're looking forward to with the Mac this year?
So not really so much the Mac because it would I'm going to test out the Neo, like we said, and see if it can get us through the podcasting and stuff. But there's not really anything in the Mac realm that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. I mean, the rumor is they're going to have a touchscreen Mac. I don't know that I care about that. I would rather them make my iPad
Yeah,
more capable and less friction
yeah,
to do a bunch of this stuff. So I'm right with you on that. It's just, again, it's one device that I love, but wish I didn't need because there's devices that I love
yeah.
more that I wish could do the things that we have. So,
That's been a rumor that's been kicking around for years, right? Since I believe Steve Jobs even mentioned people complaining about a touchscreen Mac,
yeah.
and they were talking about what the gorilla arms reaching over the keyboard and all of
Yeah.
that. So I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's more likely now. Gurman's talked about it, which is generally means it's almost a slam dunk. But yeah, we'll see. But either way, so I think just to recap, we think that this is probably the most capable Mac lineup that they have ever issued. For a
Yeah,
default purchase, Jason's on the Air, I'm on the Neo, but I do understand why the Air is probably what most people should buy. And then get as much memory
yeah,
as you can afford and love it. Pretty simple.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for the Mac segment. We still have other segments to go, so check out the rest of our episodes and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you the next one you tune into.
Yeah, guys, we'll see you the next time.